Have you ever felt like you didn't belong, not because you weren't good enough, but because no one ever took the time to see you? This is the story of Kael, a human raised by an alien family who never accepted him, a medic who saved lives across galaxies, while his own home treated him like he didn't exist. But that changes. And when it does, they can't erase what he became. If you've ever felt unseen, stay with me. This story is for you. You're just playing mechanic, sweetie. Real engineers don't brag about getting their hands dirty. That's what my foster mother's voice modulator hummed, thin and reedy, the last time I visited home. The word mechanic came out like a slur, like it stained her circuits just to articulate it. And yet, I wore the Alliance service uniform anyway. Not to prove a point, not to make a statement, but because I earned it. Every damn badge, every worn seam, every faded scar hidden under this pressed fabric. My name is Kael. I'm 36, and I'm a rapid response medical specialist in the Galactic Alliance. Or rather, I was. Now I teach emergency bioresponse for battlefield triage at the Sol 3 Medical Hub. But none of that matters at my foster parents' house. At that house, I'm still the human anomaly who never quite fit in, the one who tinkered with discarded drones instead of programming quantum algorithms, the one who didn't marry a suitable Vylor partner, who didn't gift them a data stream prodigy, who ruined every family gathering by showing up in reinforced boots instead of sleek bioluminescent robes. Have you ever walked into a room full of beings you share a history with and still felt like a stranger? Have you ever had to smile through a nutrient-paced meal while every bite tasted like betrayal because no one truly sees you as enough? Before we go any further, take a moment to subscribe, like, and leave a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. You're about to hear a story that might sound unreal, but every moment of it is burned into me like plasma shrapnel. Now let's listen to my journey. It begins last Solstice Festival. The driveway is still cracked, even with their advanced self-repairing alloys, just like it was when I was a kid. The front porch light flickers like a bad omen. I park my beat-up cargo shuttle on the street because, by all star gods, I wouldn't dare block my foster brother Kael's brand new modular star yacht. As I step out, my reinforced boots hit the composite pavement with that familiar thud, and I can already feel the cold, sterile air creeping into my sleeves before I even reach the front door. The welcome mat still hums, access granted to approved genetic lineages. But some fitting. I knock, not because I have to, but because I know they need the time. Time to process, time to remind themselves to just be polite. My foster father opens the access panel. His multifaceted eyes immediately drop to my uniform. You're not on active duty anymore, Kael. You can wear civilian clothes, you know. No hello, no how was the journey. Just that. Inside, the house smells of recycled atmospheric purifiers and judgment. My foster mother embraces me with stiff, unyielding limbs and a forced smile. You're early, her voice modulator mutters. My foster brother, Kael, glides in, all 6 feet of smug success in a tailored, data-weaved robe. He claps me on the shoulder like I'm one of his interns. Still playing Alliance grunt, huh? I sit at the dinner table right next to the empty seat where my name card reads, Specialist At.Kael, Rescue Unit 7 Zeta. Not Kael, not foster son. Just a rank, a placeholder. Dinner is perfectly synthesized nutrient paste and awkward silence. Every time I try to speak, someone interrupts. Kael shares about his latest AI venture, boasting about its processing speed. My foster mother talks about her new atmospheric control unit. My foster father explains for the 5th time how he networked with a retired Alliance senator at the Galactic Tech Expo. I try to tell them about a young Drakkian pilot I saved last year on Xylos. He was 19, lost both his legs in a small-scale nuclear detonation. I carried him 2 miles through a technology-nullified zone to a makeshift clinic in the dead of night. His name was Rion. He smiled at me through fractured ribs. But before I get past the part where the explosion hit, my foster mother's modulator emits a sharp hiss. Let's not talk about such unpleasantries at the table. It's Solstice Festival, I go quiet. Even the glowing crystal centerpiece feels like it's staring at me. Later that night, I step out into the communal courtyard, the same one I used to run around barefoot in as a child. The binary stars are too dim to see clearly, and my breath fogs in the artificial air. I stand there, hands deep in my pockets, wondering why I came, wondering why I ever come back. Then I hear it, laughter from inside, warm, full, untouched by guilt. And it hits me. I am not one of them. Not really. I am the ghost of the human child they used to know, wrapped in a uniform they'll never respect. And yet, I don't cry. I don't scream. I just stand still, silent, like the medic I've trained to be, observing, breathing, waiting for the right moment. That night I sleep in the guest chamber, the same one with the narrow bio bed and no personal hollows on the wall. It smells of ozone cleaner and distance. I lie awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about Rion, wondering if he remembers my name. No one here does. Morning comes without apology. My foster mother avoids my gaze. My foster father leaves early to hit the virtual golf course. Kael doesn't even bother to say goodbye. I sit on the edge of the bio bed, staring at my hands, the same hands that have held ruptured arteries closed, pulled beings from wreckage, stitched wounds while energy beams flew overhead. But in this house, they're just hands. Idle, unwanted, irrelevant. I pack up in silence. My bag zips with a finality I can feel in my bones. I glance back once, but the house doesn't notice. And I swear I hear my own voice whispering, "You came looking for something you already built without them." That day I drive back to base and I do not look back. Because sometimes home isn't the place you were born. It's the place you bleed and are still seen. The day I stopped crying wasn't the day they broke me. It was the day I realized they never truly had the power to. Not really. You see, I didn't grow up poor, I grew up invisible. We had the Vylor house, the automated garden, the sentient service drone with a ridiculous designation, Unit 734 Alpha. What we didn't have was space for more than one bright future. And Kael, my older foster brother, claimed that spotlight the moment he learned to interface with the household's central processing unit in his third cycle. He was the golden child, the prodigy in algorithmic design, with early acceptance to the Galactic Engineering Guild. Everyone from the network delivery bot to the Vylor spiritual leader called him the next great innovator. My foster parents weren't just proud of him, they orbited around him. They planned their communal energy meals around his project deadlines, family excursions around his research schedule. My childhood. It was spent in the automated observation chambers, clutching a biotranslator I didn't ask for, cheering for someone who never once looked my way. I, on the other hand, played with discarded drone parts, took apart the old comms units, sat in the corner of the holographic library, and devoured databanks on xeno-anatomy and battlefield medical procedures. While other Vylor younglings practiced neural interface protocols, I tried to tell my foster parents once, just once, that I wanted to be a field medic. My foster father chuckled, a dry, grating sound from his translator. My foster mother's visual display blinked slowly. "You mean like an automated bio-repair unit?" "No such thing," I said, bold with teenage defiance. "Like a rapid response medical specialist. I want to serve. I want to save lives, directly." She looked at me the way you look at someone who just said they want to communicate with space slugs, and then she asked me if I'd considered a career in waste recycling instead. From then on, every conversation felt like a cautionary tale in the making. "Don't waste your potential, Kael," she'd say. "Who's going to partner with someone who gets their hands covered in biofluids for a living?" Stop being dramatic, Kael. But it wasn't drama. It was clarity. I enlisted on my 18th Earth birthday. No announcement. No farewell gathering. Just a printed application on the communal counter in my small living space left spotless. My foster mother didn't call. My foster father didn't send a message. Kael sent a 2-word text, "Why bother?" And yet I never cried. Not even in basic training, when my human muscles screamed and my alien bunkmates effortlessly adapted to the extreme environments. Not even in advanced training, when I had to manually compress a simulated Ilos's fractured crystalline chest and keep calm while it shrieked in pain. Not even the first time I heard real energy weapons crack through the void in a sector I couldn't pronounce. Because every time I wanted to break down, I remembered that house, that sterile table, that suffocating silence. And I thought, if I cry now, they win. So I got sharper, harder, more precise. I rose through the ranks, not because I was fearless, but because I knew what it was to be overlooked. You get really good at listening when no one listens to you. I learned to read facial expressions in seconds, to hear pain behind alien bravado, to reach out when others flinched away. It made me a damn good medic. One time, during my second tour in the Procyon sector, our convoy hit an EMP mine. We lost 3 Vylor automated units instantly. The rest of us were scattered, bleeding, screaming, broken. I crawled on my belly under active energy fire to a Drakkian soldier named Rion, whose leg was dangling by sinew and pure will. He was 19. He kept hissing, "Don't tell my clan! Don't tell my clan!" And I just kept holding his hand, applying pressure, and whispering back, "They'll hear it from you yourself." He made it, because I didn't flinch, because I didn't cry. I cried later, in the dark, when no one could see me. But even then, the tears weren't about the biofluid. They were about the fact that I had finally become something. Someone, and my foster family would never know it because they'd already decided who I was. There was a moment, years into my service, where I came home on leave, just a week, just to see if maybe, just maybe, something had changed. Kael had a new promotion, a new AI co-pilot, a quantum data stream prodigy on the way. He greeted me like I was a contracted delivery bot who showed up early. My foster father asked if I still worked with those primitive biologicals. My foster mother's modulator buzzed, "You look fatigued, dear. You should try the new cellular regeneration therapy." I didn't unpack my bag. I stayed 2 cycles in the guest chamber and left without saying goodbye. And I didn't cry because that was the moment I finally understood. Some beings only see who you were, never who you've become. And yet, even knowing that, even carrying that weight, I kept going back. Why? Because some broken parts of us still crave repair, even when we know better. There's a rhythm to Void War that you don't expect. It's not all screaming and plasma smoke. It's silence in the barracks at 0200 cycles, when the biofluid has stopped gushing and all you hear is the soft beep of a life support monitor. It's the sound of breath, the kind that you weren't sure would return filling a chest that had been split open minutes before. It's the click of your own jaw, clenched so tight you forgot what it meant to rest. But somewhere in all that, you begin to feel, not the safe, hollow movie kind of feeling. No, real feeling. The kind that breaks open old walls you thought you buried back home. The kind that reminds you you're still human, despite everything. That's what war gave me. That's what my foster family never could, a reason to feel without apology. My third deployment was the hardest. Not because of the enemy, but because of who I had become. I had 3 commendations by then. I could run a 2-minute field amputation in the dark. I knew how to prioritize a field injury before a Vylor commanding officer even barked an order through their comms. But it wasn't until the Battle of Vorlog Prime that I truly earned my ghost. We were called in to support a civilian transport convoy that had taken a wrong jump and ended up in the middle of an ambush zone. It was chaos. Plasma flames licked the sky. Drakkian mothers screamed. Numa children crawled under wreck metal. One of my team leaders, a Xylos, was hit in the hip but still tried to direct traffic with a piece of structural rebar in his thigh. And then I saw her, a young Numa female, maybe 10 cycles old, lying face down near an overturned transport. Her small, multi-jointed hand limp and twisted. I didn't think. Didn't ask. Didn't wait for orders. I ran. Energy pulses danced past me like angry insects, hot and hissing. I slid beside her, my knees scraping on broken synth glass and gravel. She was breathing, barely. A piece of shrapnel had embedded itself in her abdomen. I pressed her down hard and screamed for backup. My comms were static. No one responded. So I lifted her, all 25 bloody pounds of her, and I ran across 2 blocks of hellfire, through alleys that reeked of burning fuel and despair, to a safe house with 2 stunned Alliance Marines and an empty stretcher. They stared at me like I was insane, but I got her there, alive. And then I collapsed. When I woke up, I was in a medical chamber. Concussion, 2 fractured ribs, 22 stitches across my side. The Vylor commander who visited me didn't say thank you. He said, "Next time, wait for the order, specialist. You jeopardized your unit." I stared at him, unblinking. "With respect, sir, no one else was moving, and their automated units were useless." He sighed, long and weary through his translator. "You're not a hero, specialist. You're lucky, and we can't build protocols around luck." They issued a formal warning. Not a demotion, but a mark. A quiet suggestion. He's not obedient. He's unpredictable. He's human. But I also received a note, folded in half, placed on my bunk while I was in the sonic shower. It read, "Because of you, there are 2 fewer graves on this world. Thank you." No name. Just a faint print, like dried biofluid in the corner. Later, I would be told that the footage of that rescue, captured from a helmet cam, had made its way up the chain of command. That it was shown in a secure briefing room in Alliance Central. That beings watched it in stunned silence. That someone important whispered, "Find him." But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was the look in the young Numa's eyes as I pressed a bandage to her leg. Trust, raw and pure. The kind you can't fake. The kind I had never seen in my foster mother's expression. When I returned planetside, I didn't tell my foster family. Not about the rescue. Not about the reprimand. Not about the faint scarring on my side from where shrapnel grazed me as I ran. They wouldn't have cared. At best, my foster father would have grunted something about being reckless. My foster mother might have said, "Isn't that what you signed up for? Messy, primitive work?" Kael wouldn't have replied at all. So I said nothing, because I knew by now that their approval was not a currency I needed. But deep down, a part of me hoped that someone out there had noticed. They said your presence would ruin the photo. That's what my foster mother's modulator whispered when I arrived at the pre-summit reception the night before the main event. I hadn't even removed my reinforced outer jacket yet. "You're wearing that again?" she added, her gaze flicking to my uniform like it was a biohazard on polished synth silk. I stood there still and quiet like I'd been trained to do under pressure. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. But I did say, "I'm not here for the photo." She pursed her vocalizer. "Could you maybe just wear something more neutral tomorrow? Something less intense? As if I were a bomb. As if I might go off during the family toast." I nodded slowly. Then I said, "My uniform is neutral. It's the most honest thing I own." And I walked away. The summit day itself was picture perfect. Golden light bathed the grand hall, rows of seated guests in shimmering robes, smiles curated like a holoblog. You'd never know the undercurrent of shame pulsing just beneath the surface. I sat in the second row again, the same empty seat beside me, the same silence. But this time I wasn't alone in it. Because even though my foster mother had tried to move me to a different seat for symmetry, even though Kael had barely made eye contact since I arrived, I could feel the weight of eyes shifting. Guests from other parts of the Alliance, beings who knew enough, beings who had read the small stories buried in the back pages of military journals, beings who had watched the Supreme Commander shake my hand just 24 cycles earlier. Yes, that happened. The Supreme Commander didn't just greet me, he stood beside me during the reception. He raised a crystalline goblet and spoke loudly, proudly about my service, about my contribution to battlefield biomedicine, about my role in saving lives, changing procedures, rewriting manuals that would train generations of medics after me. My foster family, they didn't know where to look. My foster mother's visual display blinked erratically. My foster father stared at his drink. Kael looking like he wanted to escape his own celebratory event. And me? I stood there, not smiling, not smug, just still. Because this wasn't vindication. It was truth spoken aloud in a room that had tried to bury it. Later, after the synchronized music began and the lights dimmed, beings came up to me. Strangers, great uncles of my foster family I hadn't interacted with since I was a child. A Celos diplomat who whispered that her sibling was in the Alliance Navy and asked if she could touch my hand. A young service bot, its optical sensor tilting, said, "Sir, I want to be like you someday. I'm going into the reserves after my programming completes." They all saw me. Not the problem. Not the inconvenience. Not the too intense human in boots. But a being who had done something. Who had carried biofluid and hope across borders and brought others back from the brink. Eventually, the holographic photographer announced it was time for the formal family photo. I began to step away, not out of bitterness, but habit. That's when I heard it. The photographer, his voice amplified for everyone to hear. "Excuse me, sir. Are you the human specialist? We need you front and center." I froze. Everyone turned. My foster mother's mouth opened to object, but then she stopped. Because at that moment, the Supreme Commander, who had stayed longer than planned, stepped forward again. He gestured to me and said with a low, resonating hum, "I think this family's most decorated member belongs right in the middle, don't you?" It was like time folded in on itself. Me, the human who was always pushed to the end of the table. Me, who never got asked about my day. Me, whose designation was never etched onto data chips or embroidered on ceremonial robes. Now standing in the center, framed by the beings who once pretended I didn't exist. And as the optical sensor clicked, I didn't think about the commendations. I thought about Rion. I thought about the young Numa I carried through fire, her tiny sibling wrapped in my emergency blanket. And then I felt something unexpected. Not pride, not revenge. Peace, because I wasn't proving anything anymore. I had already lived it. When the photo session ended, my foster mother approached me slowly. Her gaze fell to the ground, then to my boots. Her hand reached out, hesitant, trembling, and touched mine. I didn't know, her modulator whispered. And I said gently, "You never asked." She nodded just once. A quiet concession. Not an apology, but a beginning. That night, I stood alone on the observation deck of the villa, watching the cosmic dust roll through the star field like an endless, indifferent ocean. Inside, laughter floated through the transparent walls, polished, elegant, carefully edited joy. But I wasn't bitter. Not anymore, because something had shifted. Not in them, not entirely. But in me, a Vylor cousin, someone I barely remembered, joined me. He offered me a nutrient paste tube, not a fermented plasma drink. We stood in silence for a moment. Then he said, "I used to think you were just angry." I looked at him. I was. He nodded as if that somehow helped him understand. But I get it now. It's hard being told you don't belong in your own family unit. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He didn't say anything, just placed a hand on my shoulder and went back inside. That small gesture, more than the Supreme Commander's words, more than the speech or the photo, reminded me that sometimes recognition doesn't come with applause. Sometimes it's just the quiet shift when someone finally sees you, whole as you are. In the cycles that followed, I received messages from Vylor relatives, from guests at the summit, from complete strangers who'd seen the hollow story make the rounds on the intergalactic news. Supreme Commander honors human war hero at private ceremony. I didn't post the photo myself, but someone else did, and it spread. Suddenly, beings were asking questions, wanting to know more about human medics, about triage training, about how one human changed the survival rate in modern war zones without ever firing a single energy weapon. My inbox filled with young Vylor asking how to enlist, Drakkian nurses asking how to transition to fieldwork, Xylo's parents asking how to prepare their children for a universe that doesn't always welcome strength in non-technological forms. And somewhere in there, a message from Kael. Just 2 words, "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Not because I hadn't forgiven him, but because forgiveness doesn't always require an audience. Weeks later, I sat in a training chamber at the Sol 3 Medical Hub, watching a new batch of Alliance recruits try to apply pressure bandages with shaking hands. One young Vylor looked up, his voice modulator humming. "Sir, you're the one from that video, right? The one with the trapped crew?" I smiled. "Yes," I said. "But I'm also the one who's going to fail you if you don't stop wrapping that biogauze like it's a gift ribbon." The class laughed. And I laughed too. Not politely, not stiffly. A full, real laugh that cracked open something I didn't realize was still healing. One night I sat on the edge of my bio bed, staring at my service uniform. I hadn't worn it since the summit. The commendations still shimmered in the low light. The fabric still held the scent of ceremony and sweat. But now, it wasn't just a symbol of who I had to become in spite of my family. It was who I chose to be because of what they couldn't see. And yet, I thought about my foster mother's trembling hand in mine. About the way her fingers lingered, like she didn't want to let go. Like part of her finally saw that I hadn't ruined anything. I just refused to disappear. The truth is, I don't need to be at the center of the photo. I don't need the headlines. I don't even need the commendations. What I needed, what I had been chasing, was to know I wasn't worthless. And I got that. Not from the beings I was raised by, but from the lives I touched. From the young Drakkian pilot who smiled at me through fractured ribs. From the fellow Zelos soldier who bled out in my arms and whispered, "Tell my mate I wasn't scared." From every quiet soul who saw me, not as too much or too primitive, but just enough to make a difference. So now when beings ask who I am, I don't give them my title first. I say, I'm Kael. I'm 36. I've seen Void War, saved strangers, and learned to live with silence. My foster family once called me worthless. But the supreme commander of the Galactic Alliance stood beside me, looked me in the eye and said, "You saved more lives than any general I know." And I believe him. Because now I believe me. Thank you for listening to my story. If Kael's story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own battles, or gave you strength to stand in your truth, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it, leave a comment. And most importantly, remember, you don't need anyone's permission to be seen. You already matter. Until next time, stay strong, stay human, and stay seen, Alien Whispers.